Cecilia, and today I want to show you how I use Procreate to personally illustrate. I always find these videos by other artists super helpful, so I wanted to do one myself. I want to preface this by saying that this is by no means a Procreate or illustration tutorial. This is a video to show you how I personally use these tools and how my style of art comes to be. This video is meant to be mostly inspirational, but I do think that whether you think my art is great or crappy, I can be of service to you with all that I've learned about Procreate and illustration techniques after so much practice. I can show you that you don't need to know all the difficult program techniques and Procreate hacks to draw something beautiful. I use Procreate very minimalistically, usually only 3 layers and only a few brushes that all come with Procreate when you purchase them, so no external purchase is required. I will show you all the things that I use and we'll try to keep it simple and easy. Anyway, let's jump right in. Let's start with the supplies you need. Procreate runs on almost all iPads. I have the iPad Air 4 in Space Gray, which is the one from 2020, and it has an 11-inch display. I know many artists prefer the 13-inch iPad Pros for their bigger size, but I personally love this iPad for its portability, and I have no issues with the smaller screen. Then I have the Apple Pencil 2nd Gen, which magnetizes to the side of the iPad. The pencil is perfect for art, and I think its pressure sensitivity is unmatched. I also use this case when drawing because the Apple Pencil itself is very thin, and I don't personally really like that when drawing. It's not that comfortable. I will link the Amazon link for the case below. I do use a paperlike screen protector. Mine is from the brand Paperlike, but you can definitely get cheaper ones on either Amazon or wherever. I know the opinions about these screen protectors are very mixed, but I love them. They give your iPad some texture and minimize glare, so it's much more comfortable to draw, and it also makes sure your pencil doesn't slide all over the screen. Then, of course, this is Procreate. Procreate is a one-time purchase app. It will set you back $10 on the App Store, and it doesn't have any subscription model, so that's great. Procreate is used by many artists, and online there are endless amounts of free tutorials, and it's very versatile and loved. Now let's actually get to drawing. I will click the plus icon and select the square canvas. Most of my artwork is on a square canvas because Instagram posts are square and it makes it easy to format for making stickers. What I do always do is double the size of the canvas. The standard square size in Procreate is very pixel dense and makes art looks a little bit pixelated, so I like to increase the size by, well, 200%. So we go, instead of 258 pixels by 258 pixels, we go to 496 pixels by 496 pixels. I make sure to set my DPI to 300, and that's basically the canvas settings I use. Then let's talk brushes. I mainly use 3 brushes that correspond to the process. So let's start with sketching. To sketch, I use the Procreate pencil, which you can find under the sketching tab in Procreate's native brush library. You can see that the brush is very textured and it is very pressure sensitive, so that is great. I like to sketch with kind of like a thicker line brush like this. So when I sketch, I put my size to 15% and my opacity to 100%, and this is what you get. Then let's move on to line art. I use the chalk brush, which you can find under the calligraphy tab. It's also native to Procreate, so you don't have to buy anything to use this. The chalk brush looks like this. It's also very pressure sensitive, much more so than the Procreate pencil. You can see that it kind of has like a gritty textured feel, which I love because it gives your drawing this sketchy feeling. So my line art is usually colored. So for example, let's take a red line. You can see that right now these lines are very dense and thick. I like to use the size 7 and put the opacity down to 80, and then you get this, which I like a lot more. And finally, I color in my drawings with the gouache paint that you can find under the painting tab. Again, this is a native brush to Procreate. I really love this gouache. It has a really nice feel to it. It's very pressure sensitive, as you can see. It layers also, which is great, and it has a really nice texture that just brings your art to life. I feel like gouache paint works the best with these kind of pastel colors like this. And the more you increase the brush size, the more texture you'll get. So I like to have my brush sizes as big as possible, but that changes per drawing and per item that I'm coloring in. Then let's talk about references. The first thing I do, and most artists do, is run to Pinterest. For this video, I want to draw some Christmassy items because Christmas is coming up and I need to prepare some shop update things. So I'm just gonna search for that, Christmas items. Pinterest knows that I'm an artist and that I'm looking for art inspiration, so it already gives me a lot of art. I usually just scroll through this and look at it and see what I want to do. Usually an idea manifests in my head when I watch this, but yeah. For example, I see here that there's a nutcracker and I think that's a great idea. So, you know, let's search for a nutcracker. I think right here I found a pretty good reference for a nutcracker and I will give my own spin on this. Now there's two things you can do to keep the reference with you while drawing. One is to download the image and put it into Procreate, which I'll show you in a bit. The second is to use the split screen feature that iPad has. So you push these three buttons over here and you click split view and then you select Procreate and then you have two screens in one. I usually slide Pinterest all the way to the side so that it's a little bit smaller. The issue is that you have a smaller canvas to work with, but it usually works if you're like me, too lazy to download images and put it into Procreate, because that could take some time. The second option is to import a reference into Procreate itself. You do this by hitting the action button and then hitting reference, and then you go to image and you can import an image from your camera roll, if it will let me. And I select the nutcracker image, and then I can zoom in on the image and change it and do whatever I want with it, but I can also move it all the way over my screen so it's not on the canvas, but I can still use it as a reference. And then it's time for sketching. I think I'm just going to sketch something and I'll speed up my drawing process. Usually what I do is I take a real life reference and make the shapes and sizes a little bit rounder so that you get more of a cartoony feel. This is maybe a good time to explain about some of the features in Procreate that I do use. One of them is the drag around function, which is this toggle right here. So you can drag the entire layer around, you can rotate it, you can make it smaller or bigger, and I usually do all of this formatting in the sketch phase, because if you change sizes with your actual artwork, the pixels might be weird and it might be in low resolution when you eventually finish your artwork. You also have the selection tool, that is this one, and then you can draw around something and it will select that, and if you then hit the click button, you can drag around only the part that you selected. Something that's also very useful, especially in this case, is when you select this, you can also copy and paste it, and then in a separate layer you get that exact form again. So if I now drag this layer, I have an extra arm that I can just flip, and then I have a symmetrical arm on the other side. It's maybe also good to note that I like to keep all of the sketch in one layer, so I usually merge every single sketch layer. You do that by pinching them together like this, and then you can move everything at once again. Something that is also very useful in Procreate is the fact that you can draw perfect circles and lines. You just have to draw a line and then hold your pencil down and you can get a perfect line. The same goes with a circle. You draw a circle and then it makes a perfect circle, but you can see it's more of an oval. So then you keep down one finger and it warps into a perfect circle. So I lost the footage of me sketching the rest, for which I'm very sorry. But well, we have our little nutcracker right here. Now we don't need the reference anymore, so let's get rid of that. And then it's time for line art. To start line art, I select the layers and I press the plus icon and I get a new empty layer. A new layer literally just means that I can draw over what I made here and erase it again without actually erasing what's underneath. Before I start my line art, I usually look at my color palette because I like to draw my line art in the colors that I will eventually use. So we're going to colors and we will go to palettes, and then you can easily make a new palette by pressing the plus icon and click create a new palette. So when you've made your palette, the palette will have saved right here, and you can drag and drop any colors from the color wheel to that. So for example, we want a Christmassy feel for this, so let's use a rather darker green, and I can press this button and it will save the color, and I won't have to go back and look for it. So I wanted to show this website, colorhex.com, which is a really helpful website. I mean, I hate the ads right now, but it's a really helpful website for finding color palettes. For example, I would like this Christmas color palette. So I click this and it will tell me the hex codes, and you can fill in hex codes in Procreate and make this color palette the palette that you use. Anyway, let's get to line art. Another useful tool in Procreate is the undo button, which is literally just clicking with 2 fingers and it will undo what you just did. If you want to go forward what you just did, you click with 3 fingers and it comes back. Another useful thing to know is that if you want to copy a certain color, you just have to press down with 1 finger and it shows you this wheel. And if I select this color, I will have that color in my palette and I can just use it. So I know I just said you shouldn't change proportions after the sketch, but I'm not quite happy. I think it doesn't look cartoonish enough right now. So I'm going to make him a little bit smaller and fatter, and well, we'll see. There we go, that looks much better in my opinion. Now let's start with the coloring. I again create a new layer, but this time I drag the layer underneath the line art. So let's select the gouache paint. And by painting in the layer underneath the line art, you can see that the line art remains intact even when I breach a line. Something that you must keep in mind with the gouache brush is that it is not completely opaque, and that if you draw again over the same substance, you get this layered feeling and it might look a little bit weird. So I usually prioritize making sure I have one cohesive piece of gouache paint. So instead of doing this, and you can see that they overlap and it's kind of a little bit ugly, I draw one big line and then later I could go back and correct it by erasing the parts that I don't need. The gouache brush makes colors a little bit different because it's not completely opaque, so what I usually do is just copy the color from the line art and then use it to draw, and you can see that the black of the gouache and the black of the chalk is just a little bit different, and I really like that look. If you've made the mistake, like I just did, to color in the details before you do the entire block of color, you can add in a new layer beneath it and draw in the face details, and then just erase what you don't need. Well, just very basically, with a very basic sketch, that is how I draw. The last thing that I always do is change the background color. I basically never use a full white background color. I don't like how that looks. What I usually do is take a full opacity tight brush like the monoline brush, this one, which is just, it has no pressure sensitivity, it's just a line. I usually take that one, choose the color I want to use it with, and then draw a square around the canvas. I'll show you how to do that. So I want the background color to be a little bit of a green, soft green, because of the Christmas vibes. To make the background, I'm first gonna make another layer, and then I'm going to choose the background color that I would like. So what you do is you draw a square in this separate layer, and then again hold one finger down so that you get a perfect square. And then you use the enlarge tool to enlarge the square so that you have a border around the piece. I really like how that looks. And then this is the part where I do use color drop. I usually don't use it in my drawings itself because I want the texture, but here you can use color drop. Now you can see that the piece, because the paint is not opaque, it will look really weird right now. So I usually fill up the layer with the background color and then go back and erase the color behind the piece that I drew. And then you can see that the piece kind of comes out of that again. By the way, I'm not happy with this background color, so yeah, that's a lot better. We want a little bit of a lighter color, that's nicer. So yeah, let's erase all the crap behind this. Then, as you see, because we color dropped, you get this really weird line thing here. I usually fix that by erasing that line and holding down my pen to make a perfect straight line out of the eraser. And well, there we go, that's our little nutcracker. I usually add some raster behind my drawing because that makes it look a little bit more interesting, especially for sticker sheets when you post it on Instagram. So to do that, I go to the action tool and I go to drawing guide. I toggle on drawing guide and I edit the drawing guide for how big I want it to be. For example, this seems nice. Then I add a separate layer again, and I usually use the same brush that I use for line art, that is chalk. And then in this case, I think I will use a completely white color. I adjust the thickness to what I like, and then you can just draw the lines and again hold your pen so that the lines are perfectly straight. And then after you've done that, you just toggle off the drawing guide and it leaves you with this. I usually regroup the layers for when I go back layer and want to do something with it, like formatting it for stickers. So the background is one thing and the paint is one thing and the line art is one thing. The sketch is still there, but it's toggled off, as you can see. Of course, our little nutcracker friend is just a really basic example of how I illustrate. But yeah, this is the same technique I used when making drawings like this, and like this. I think that pretty much wraps up this video in which I show you how I illustrate. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found some inspiration. I hope this helped. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget I have an Etsy shop that is, I think, currently on vacation mode because I have an artist alley coming up. Be prepared for the vlog, by the way. But yeah, my Etsy shop is in the description. All my links are in the description. Anyway, thank you so much. Subscribe if you like this, and I see you in the next video. Bye!